And Reform UK is surging. This new party started by Lowe just recently is dominating the conversation anyway at this point in time, because they will say what Nigel Farage will not say. And I want to contrast that, but I've got the Britain stuff later in the show, and the stuff I want to contrast that with our leadership at the beginning of the show. But I just find it interesting, the different approaches. We are in a situation where Pierre Poilievre says poetry at the vigil for the victims of the trans shooter or the male school shooter there. He goes and does poetry where he had an opportunity to address and call this out, and he refuses. And I just don't. Well, that's why the conservatives lose, because they don't address the actual thing that's happening. Instead, they read poetry, and then poetry's fine, but it's not addressing the problem. And just like probably what they're going to do is use the tragedy of the school shooting to justify taking people's guns away. And that's not great. I don't like that at all. More money to Ukraine. I didn't hear about that. The Ukrainian press is the one, the Kiev press is the one that is reporting that. So Chrystia Freeland's doing her job, I guess. I don't know. Paid protesters and decibel readers. So there's a United States podcast, and they're talking about protesters and how much they get paid. And it's a pretty wild, it's a wild conversation. $50 an hour. Easy, no problem. So they have a vested interest and an incentive to keep those protests going for a long time. They get paid more. Wild, right? Enbridge doesn't want a contract for the pipeline. Too risky. So Mark Carney's pipeline, is it ever going to come to fruition? Doubtful. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we start with the fallout from the school shooting out in BC. And Greg nails it. He says, Canadian politics is like a terribly rehearsed public school play. Awful, unconvincing performances. Actors butcher their lines. The audience goes along with it out of pity and obligation. Yeah, otherwise you just need to admit that your kid on stage, or your country, our country, is a sad joke. Right. And this is all, it's performative. And they're going to use this and say, because of this tragedy, obviously all Canadians stand by more gun bans, order in council, more authoritarian crackdowns on our freedoms, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the same modus operandi. This is the same strategy they use in the United States. Oh, there's been a shooting, time to take your guns. And maybe we should look at the mental health medications that people are on broadly, because it seems like there's a trend. But instead of doing that, our politicians say poetry. So Real Mr. Bench says, when tomorrow starts without me, single tear, right? A poem for the community of Tumbler Ridge, read by Pierre Poilievre at the community vigil. And I said, you know what would be more impactful for Poilievre to say other than a sad poem? 1, we will stop affirming this damaging and fake ideology. 2, we will stop schools and healthcare from promoting this harmful ideology. 3, we will arrest and charge anyone who tries to promote this to our kids. I ran out of space in the tweet, but fundamentally, you could take this and say, we cannot let this happen again. Let's address the root of this thing. And the root of this thing seems to be SSRIs and this weird ideology that's played into more school shootings than is comfortable. So a lot of these drugs flatten people's emotions. They turn them into disassociated robots, and that ends up with school shootings. It's not the guns, it's the mental health medication, quoted mental health medication, that's doing a lot of harm. And nobody's willing to address that. And so that's why it looks like a pantomime. That's why it looks like a badly rehearsed school play, because they're saying the lines they know will be acceptable. Everybody has to go along with it, because how dare we demand more or something like that? And nobody's going to address the actual problem. They're going to reframe this as a problem with guns. And they're going to say, we shouldn't have access. But the other problem is the police took the guns and then returned the guns. So the whole thing's a mess. And the victims are many, far too many. And nobody yet has addressed the problem, the actual core of the issue. And not Poilievre, not Mark Carney, nobody. And so we're going to ignore this and wait for more tragedies because, well, we refuse to demand better. Jonathan is responding to the Telegraph. This is another interesting aspect of the modern era in Canada. We don't get news from our local news. We get propaganda from them. From foreign newspapers, we can get news. if you notice it, if you see it, right? And so the Telegraph is reporting Canada's shooter tried to kill his family before. Look at that, his family, because they understand biology, I guess, his family. And what he tried to do was burn down the house. This is not before, like, he tried to kill his family and then reloaded and then successfully killed his family. No, different time, months ago, tried to kill his family by burning down the house. Again, not the gun. Right? The gun didn't start the fire. That's a song. Jonathan Van Maren says, at some point, is it worth asking why so many major Canadian news stories are broken in foreign press? From the Trudeau blackface photos to details about the Tumbler Ridge tragedy, the CBC's entire justification for their taxpayer-funded existence is Canadian news, but they give us documentaries on drag shows while foreign press lands scoops. Yeah. Crazy, right? And so we're in a situation where we're being told by their press that is paid off by the government exactly what the government want us to know and nothing more. And so the press is hamstrung, and we don't know it until a story that's relevant is published in foreign press, and then people talk about it, and then it goes away in the memory hole because we're in a washing machine of propaganda at this point. Antonio says Canada's Olympics collapse, DEI and drugs over medals. So the medal results in 2010. Now, I don't know. This is Vancouver 2010. I don't know if, and I think our Beijing result was better, but I don't know if this is number of medals up till this point in the games or if this is total medals in the 2010 Olympics. Because I don't think that's okay if you're comparing like total medals to medals so far. Are the games almost over? I don't think they're almost over, are they? Anyway, 5 bronze, which is the same as 2010, 3 silver. 2010 we had 7 silver, no gold, and 14 gold for the 2010 Vancouver team. So crazy. It doesn't seem like anything's thriving in Canada, and I think, again, bad governance and bad policies are to blame for most of that. Juno News says 2 men face charges from the United States Department of Justice for operating an illegal immigrant human smuggling ring that flew Mexican and South American migrants into Canadian airports. So we're going to talk later during the Epstein. I've got a couple of Epstein things, but it's talking about human trafficking and the connections between human trafficking and not documented humans, meaning no birth certificate, no record of their existence at all. They're just human baby farms that produce babies for money because they're currency. So like the baby farms sell the babies and they don't care what happens to it. See you later. That's that. So wild and crazy accusations, but it all plays into human trafficking and slavery and all sorts of stuff. I think the numbers are much larger than at any point in history, and they hide through layers and layers of bureaucracy, and they own the governments. So pretty wild. But human trafficking going through Canadian airports, that's interesting. Darth Powell says more canes than cribs. So people are old and need a walking stick, but no babies, no cribs. Toronto now has more seniors than children. So this is 2001 until 2025. The number of children is roughly the same. The number of seniors has increased to outpace the kids by a lot, right? And Darth Powell says this is what inflating home prices accomplishes, collapsing birth rate. So maybe the number of kids seems it's not collapsing. Like the birth rate's not collapsing all the way down here or anything like that, which is good. But it is an interesting situation where the makeup of Toronto the face of Toronto has changed and changed again, right? Collapsing birth rate, I think that is happening. Somebody said in one of the comments, it's actually a byproduct of an effective birth control program, not housing prices. And I think, why not both? Here is a lady, and she says, I fell for it, and don't fall for it. And she says, I've got a couple of meetings, but don't fall for this crap. I want to raise my kids, she says. And I don't think she's wrong. And often when I'm talking about the difference between women and men, because there is a difference between women and men, this is what I'm talking about. Men, if they're engaged in a job, they're building a company, they're building a house, they're building something they're interested in bringing to fruition, they'll work all the time and just work like dogs about it. And that's what they like to do, right? And women are hardwired biologically and this is not a slight women, I'm just saying, to work that way for their family. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful. That's a great way to be. And I think men, it's the same wiring, just different activities, because again, biology. But here's this lady. She says, I fell for it. Don't you fall for it. Here we go.
Okay, I'm going to make this quick because I have to go into a meeting. I have 3 meetings today. I have been in the corporate life for almost half my life. For context, I'm 40 years old. I have 2 children who are 11 and 7. And I fell for it. I fell for this thing where, go to college, get your degree. If you want to have kids, you can do it all. You can have a career, you can have kids, you can just do everything. Well, I don't want to do everything. I don't want to do that anymore. I fell for that shit. Do not fall for it. Do not fall for that shit. I want to take my kids to school. I want to pick them up from school. I want to be there when they get home. I want to chaperone for them, volunteer at school. I just want to go to the gym, clean my house, do laundry, go to the grocery store, and just be home. So do me a favor. Do not fall for that shit, because it is not worth it. It's a joke. It's a joke. Don't do it. Be home, find a way to be home, be with your family, be with your kids. Just, it's not worth it. None of this is worth it. So.
And so I think that people are being told fallacies about who and what we are in order to get them to buy in to this lie, and not just women, men too, and get them to buy into this lie. And if they buy into this lie, then they're so busy with everything that they can't keep up, and they can't realize, they can't see, because they're so busy. They want to be in their kids' lives, but they're so busy that they can't be in their kids' lives. And so that conflict, because you need to work in order to afford the lifestyle that you've come to rely on, et cetera, and so on. It's a trap. It's a trap. Fundamentally, it's a trap. And the real riches are in building your family. And it's something that we've forgotten. Family has almost become a bad word in our modern era. And it's a very, very interesting thing. Community is bad. Family is bad. You want to be your own island off on your own, hours away from your family. This makes you easy to control. Very, very difficult for you to take a risk because there's nobody there for you to rely on. Friends, sure, but, family is a bit more reliable sometimes. And so it's just one of those things where I feel like these lies are used to keep us in that control mechanism. Here's a control mechanism about food. This is the monetary grab bag of governance. And it's more about, we are manipulated, and the manipulation is a couple of steps back, and so it's hard to see. And this is another manipulation of food and food prices. And I think that this woman is right. And I think that she's correct about the 5 corporations that control everything in the grocery store and the reason for the persistent high prices. Also, the Bank of Canada's target for 2% inflation a year is high, and there's no reason for that. It's a hidden tax. So that's another confounding thing. It's a hidden tax. People don't understand it. And so people pay it without complaint. Anyway, here's this lady to explain food.
You that are receiving that GST break are in for a real treat here. You're going to save probably $10 to $12 a month with this GST break. Anyways, did you know that here in Canada, only 5 corporations dominate and rule the grocery industry here in our country? And did you know that that's because the federal government keeps those contracts in place so that other grocers cannot come into our country and create competition? Therefore, the prices can stay extremely high and nothing will ever be done about it. Even during inflation, when things are all raised, they never go back down. Why is that? That is called, what is that called? Price anchoring. And it's 100% deliberate. 100% we are being controlled by 5 major corporations. That's Loblaws, Sobeys/Empire, Metro, Walmart, and Costco. Walmart is also foreign, but dominant. So there's no competition. So they set the prices, not the market. They're not going off of market prices because there is no competition, okay? Which is controlled by the federal government. So all you liberals that are coming at me saying, Mark Carney doesn't control the grocery prices. Mark Carney controls a lot more than you're aware of, honey, okay?
So there you go. And there's another minute and a half just going through different control levers and proving her point. So I think that stuff is interesting. Another 95 million to Ukraine. I think it's interesting because people, again, don't realize the different layers and the control levers. She ends the video by saying if the government wanted to help relieve food prices, they could, and they choose not to. And that's accurate. That's accurate. Moving on a little bit, Ukraine. The government could also keep our money in the country, but they choose not to as well. Bradshaw says Mark Carney quietly gives Ukraine another $95 million. Canadians don't even find out through Canadian mainstream media. It's Kiev Post. So a new $100 million spend to Ukraine, including medical support. That's $45 million for medical support and $50 million for the Danish model. I don't know what the Danish model is. I assume it's a pastry of some kind. So probably not. I'm just kidding. So it's $100 million blown on an afternoon. Why not? Why not? I mean, it's not like the Canadian public complains ever about anything, unfortunately. Wealth Muth says, look closely. These aren't politicians, right? No, I don't think so either. They're part of a globalized managerial class that doesn't serve the public. It manages the public. Their loyalty is upward, not downward. Their script is written elsewhere. Elections are theater. Governance is outsourced. And Canadians are waking up to the fact that the representatives don't represent them, but international causes and overseas issues. Ukraine, Palestinians, Somalis, and the list goes on. But definitely not Canadians, definitely not the people who pay taxes in this country. They don't work for us. They just use our money to benefit the globalist masters who put them in with their rigged elections. I think that's what's going on, unfortunately. Here's Andrew. He says, Canadian beef in Canada, $27 to $33 a pound. Canadian beef in Vietnam, $12.50 to $18.50 a pound. Okay, then. And so here is Maninder, and he's an MP. He says Canadian beef is now served in more than 600 restaurants across Vietnam and stocked in over 4,000 supermarkets. Agriculture is a growing pillar of our trade relationship with Vietnam. From beef and seafood to Canadian fruit, great to sit down with them and see how this partnership is creating opportunity for Canadian farmers, workers, and exporters. It seems like Canadians are not allowed to get beef at a discount, but that the government is subsidizing or somehow intervening in the price of beef in order to make a trade deal with Vietnam palatable in order to get this win and say, oh, we're expanding our trade with other people other than the United States, and this is a win for Canada, and you should, get on board. And I don't want to subsidize cheap beef to Vietnam. I'd rather have cheap beef in our grocery stores, and Vietnam can pay the $27 to $33 that it actually costs. Why are Canadians getting punished? It's like when you call into a cell phone provider or something like that, and you say, I see new customers get this deal. Can I get this deal? And they say, no, sir, it's only for new customers. So why are you punishing? I've been a long-standing customer and you're punishing me? I'm going to cancel and then become a new customer somewhere else and get a deal because you can't give me a deal because I've been a customer for 5 years? No, right? Like, it doesn't make it. I live here. I pay taxes here. You're subsidizing them? Come on, are you kidding me? So it's all for optics, to get a win, to get a trade deal that's not with the United States. Peter Menzies says, confirmed there will be no new pipelines. Alberta's been conned. Enbridge says that it's not willing to take on development risk of Alberta pipeline project. Sorry, my heater. It was cold in my studio this morning, but it's not too bad now, so I turned off my heater. Daisy Media, let's talk about free speech, and I'm going to have to kill the stream at some point during this free speech thing. Daisy Media says, why is this being censored right now? So this is a video of CAF veteran Wild Bill and Nick Alexander being attacked by a mob of Antifa. This was allowed to go on for some time before any of the dozens of Toronto police standing by watching came to assist. They did nothing about the ongoing assaults. Nick was attacked with an edged weapon shortly after this. Both Wild Bill and Nick were arrested. So they arrested the people who were being attacked. This is their plan, because if they arrest any of the Antifa mob will riot. And so the police will be overwhelmed. And so they take away the people who are being targeted by Antifa to defuse the situation, and they're keeping them safe, but they're arresting them. And and criminalizing being targeted by Antifa. And in doing so, they're strengthening Antifa's ability to operate. Okay, they should be arresting every single one of those Antifa people, and they're not. And the reason they're not is because they support the Antifa people. Juno News says Heritage Minister Mark Miller is warning Canadians to be wary of illegitimate media that doesn't align with state-funded outlets like the CBC. We've been following this story for a few days, and now newspapers are writing about it. Nobody's got any real insights into what Mark Miller meant about illegitimate media. I think everybody's kind of just speculating, although I haven't read this Juno News article, so apologies about that. But I think they're mostly using his words, and he hasn't updated what he said, as far as I understand it. So we'll see. I'm waiting to hear a response if he does name names to help Holly Doan understand what he means. Illegitimate media not aligning with CBC is what Juno News says, but CBC just makes stuff up sometimes. So Racine says, I'm sorry about the name, says Berkeley gender and race studies students were given the task of creating and editing Wikipedia pages and filling them with critical theory and queer propaganda instead of submitting final papers for over a decade. It's about who controls knowledge. Yep. And so they've got Wikipedia full of all of this propaganda garbage. And Grokipedia is now growing. And so Rajat says Grokipedia versus Wikipedia, the February 2026 data breakdown, backlinks 362,000 all-time high, 5.6 million articles versus Wikipedia's 7 million, traffic share 14%. US traffic 9%, India traffic, speed, real-time X integration versus days for human approval, editing 75% of edits are now Grok to Grok, AI self-approved, growth is 6-time article expansion since October 25 launch. So it's an interesting situation because it's a lot of power to have for, like, Wikipedia is a lot of power and they've weaponized it against common sense. And now Grokipedia is going to just self-approve its own edits. So the AI is only as good as the information that it's given. And if it writes a whole Wikipedia encyclopedia based on the information it's been given, then it could sound plausible, but it could still be a lie if you're loaded with false information. If you are on a map and you think that you're in one place on a map and you start plotting your directions based on where you think you are on the map, and then you find out you're somewhere else, you find out the information you had was faulty, then that's going to change everything. There's nothing about that first journey on the map that you can take with you to the next journey. You have to orient yourself, find where you are, and then find your destination, and then start over, basically. And so, like, I have a hard time people using AI to say, oh, see, this is true. It's like, well, the people who programmed the AI believe it to be true, maybe, but whether it's true or not, I think I'll make up my mind about that by reading the studies that were done, reading their methodology, reading the things that are actually tangibly done, not the conclusions of the AI based on what it's programmed on. You know what I'm saying? And so Grokipedia, it's better than Wikipedia, probably, but not much. And so I'm skeptical, and you should be skeptical of the information that you find on the internet because we'll take it all with a grain of salt, because it could be AI slop. It could be, right, the video, the text, it could all be AI slop, but it could be based on a fallacy. It could be based on an AI that's on the wrong spot on the map and thinks it's one place when in reality, that place doesn't exist. They're not there, right? And they're somewhere else, and they have to reorient and in order to find the truth. And the truth is not what they're saying it is. And so I'm very skeptical, and they're going to have these AI things, and people are going to believe in these AI things, and they're going to feel like they're obligated to believe these AI things because the AI is way smarter than humans. And the AI lacks context most of the time, doesn't understand everything, all of the inputs, it doesn't get it. And B, the AI has limited memory. So as you move forward in time, it forgets the beginning. And so it operates based on a cantilevered kind of understanding of what it's doing, but it forgot the beginning, so it doesn't understand. And so some of them, coding works really pretty okay. Accounting's pretty okay. It's hard to get out of the memory on accounting. But if you're doing something long term, it's very, like, you're going to write a novel. By the 8th chapter, it's forgotten what's human and what's not human, right? Like there are problems with it. And so, like, I have a hard time believing this thing is as good as they say it is. In fact, I'm still not convinced it's not some kind of spinner program. There were programs that were used to make one blog into many blogs, and it's just language tricks here and there. But I mean, there's something about AI. It can code like crazy, and it can do certain things very, very well. But mainly what it can do is watch us to make sure we don't go outside of parameters, and that's a red flag. That's a big red flag for me, dog. We will be doing a kitchen table talk today. I'll be sending the email out after this, so I forgot to do it last night, so apologies, everybody. But we will be doing it. So if you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. If you don't, that's okay. We'll be around today at 1, and then I'll be around tomorrow as well as usual. So thanks for watching.